If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. Drop a like on the video as well. It takes 2 seconds and it makes a massive difference for the success of the video. I really appreciate that as well. I upload almost daily on this channel, so if you're looking for some sports talk during the quarantine, this is the place for it. Today, we are talking about the discussion that has come up in the past few weeks around whether or not Michael Jordan would be better in today's NBA. The Last Dance documentary has really brought up a lot of discussions around Michael Jordan, his career, about the GOAT conversation, him versus LeBron, which is just an exhausting thing at this point that I'm just very tired of. But it's a conversation that's happening, and there's not many other things going on basketball related, so I figured I would tackle it today. Now, because of this Last Dance documentary and because of the GOAT conversation being brought up, a common talking point that was always brought up in that discussion was, well, how good would Michael Jordan be in today's NBA? And there's also the conversation of how good would LeBron be in the 90s, but I think both of these conversations are ridiculous because I think it's insane to say that either player would not be still amazing in either era, because that's what all-time talent tends to mean. But regardless of that, today we're going to talk about if Jordan would be better, and as you can tell from the title, I think he would be. Now, as for the arguments against him being better, well, it is the argument that, well, he can't really shoot threes, and today's game is more about threes, and the talent in today's league is better. Now, one of the dumbest arguments that comes from that is basically saying that Michael Jordan in today's game would be DeMar DeRozan, because the most simple-minded motherfuckers on the planet see, wow, 6'6" to 6'5" guy who's athletic can shoot mid-range shots, so they're basically the same fucking player. That is one of the most moronic things I have ever heard, but that is basically the argument against him, which is that can't shoot threes, his all-around scoring game is fantastic outside of the threes, but threes are so important that it would be a huge hindrance on him, which I agree with to some extent. However, the fact that DeMar DeRozan is an absolute outlier in terms of scoring in the modern NBA shows what Jordan would be in the modern NBA, and that is that he would be shooting threes, and my reason for that is as follows. Basically, as I have said before, you can't just take the approach of you're taking Michael Jordan and you're just teleporting him to the modern NBA, because that's not how anything works. So really what should be said is if Michael Jordan was born in like 1995, got drafted in the 2010s, and the game became more and more about three-point shooting as he was growing up, so he would focus more on developing his three-point shot. In the 1990s, three-point shooting was not emphasized. The highest amount of attempts you would see a team take back then was like 20 a game, which is nothing for today's NBA. 20 is not even the lowest amount of three-point attempts in the NBA today. The three-point shot in the 90s was just not a big part of the game. It wasn't like the 80s and especially the 70s where it was really just a novelty, but it also was like probably like the fifth best shot according to coaches back then that you could get was an open three-pointer. So as a result, Michael Jordan did not shoot mid-range shots. Growing up watching the 70s and the early 80s before he was drafted, three-point shooting was just not a part of the game. Guards would be taking a lot of mid-range shots and they'd be attacking the basket. That's just what the game was when MJ was growing up, so as a result, never really developed that deep ball. But if he was like, let's say, Luka Doncic, growing up watching the game, seeing Steph Curry end up dominating the game from 2014 onward with his three-point shot, seeing the Miami Heat dominate by shooting more three-pointers with the Big Three era, Michael Jordan would adapt the game. That's just how it is. That's the evolution of the game, and it's ridiculous to think that Jordan would not adapt to that, and it's ridiculous to think with what he did in his era that he wouldn't be a great shooter today. because Michael Jordan is the greatest mid-range shooter of all time. I really don't think it's even close, because he had insane efficiency while also taking an insanely high rate of mid-range shots. And a guy who is that lethal taking a mid-range shot, and also that lethal at the free throw line, adapting his game to shoot more three-pointers would also be lethal from outside. One of the biggest signs of a player being able to be a good three-point shooter is a good free throw percentage, and Michael Jordan has always been a great free throw shooter. I think at the very least, Michael Jordan would be just as good of a three-point shooter today as LeBron James is today, which is to say he would shoot about 5 or 6 attempts and shoot around 36 to 38%, which is definitely above average, but not like Steph Curry insane or anything close to that, which that's still very good, and it would mean his game was adapted. But now let's talk about outside of the three-point shooting that Michael Jordan would be doing. Let's talk about how three-point shooting would affect his game overall, because he's not the only guy that's going to be shooting the ball. In today's NBA, the spacing would mean that him driving to the basket, him posting up, him getting his mid-range pull-ups out of the pick and roll, all of that stuff would be so much easier than it was in the 90s. Because if you go back and watch footage of that shit, there was always a second defender right there ready to help contest. They didn't always contest his mid-range shots and things like that. They didn't always have 2 people contesting him at the basket, but it was a lot more frequently than you would see today. Because the thing about the modern game that does not apply to the 90s is everybody, almost everybody on the court can shoot the ball most of the time. So as a result, teams are forced to stick to the perimeter and stray further and further away from the basket, because you can't afford to leave the good three-point shooter wide open, because that's an extra point right there and it's a damn good shot. Now, in the 90s, a three-pointer was not considered a good shot. It was also very rare to see players who were very good three-point shooters, plenty of good mid-range shooters, but not great three-point shooters. And as a result, teams would be able to bring doubles easier. They'd be able to be ready to help easier. They'd be right in the way at the basket a lot closer than they would be today. When you see teams bring help defense today, it's because they've also made defense more switchable as a result of the three-point shooting. Really, more versatile defense in today's league is a result of spacing, because they wouldn't be able to bring double teams and wouldn't be able to bring help defense if players were not versatile enough to move around the perimeter with ease. Today's defense is not weaker than it was in the 90s. It's not. I find that argument ridiculous. It's because there is more spacing in today's league, and as a result, you cannot crowd the paint to nearly, not even half the degree that you could in the 90s and eras before that. Now, as a result, that means that Michael Jordan would be able to take his defenders one-on-one way more than he was in the 90s. And if you think Michael Jordan was already unstoppable, now imagine you can only go man-to-man on him, because if you don't, he's going to whip a pass across the court to a wide-open three-point shooter who's going to nail it. That is a whole nother level of ridiculously hard to defend. Just because players are not allowed to tackle other players anymore and teams are scoring more points does not mean defense is worse. Teams are scoring more because everyone can shoot, and also everyone is more versatile. There are not players that are really limited to 1 or 2 roles on offense anymore. So with that said, yes, Jordan in today's NBA would be better in my opinion, because his spacing around him, his three-point shooting improved, his ability to get to the basket with the three-point shooting that would be around him. Also, I forgot to mention, his playmaking would be even better in today's league, because it's easier to get assists when everyone can shoot the ball. But would he necessarily have the same success that Jordan had in the 90s? Well, that really depends on the circumstances. What teams he's on, who's on that team, if it's enough help, all of those factors, it can go either way. If he was teleported to the current Chicago Bulls like I have him here with a three-point shot, I don't think he'd be winning a championship with this roster. However, if a team was catered to him well, he certainly still could. Would he be the best player in today's league if he played today? Probably. I don't think it would be just a by far and away he is the best guy talent-wise, but he would definitely be up there, and his overall game would be better. I agree the league is a little bit more talented than it was in the 90s, but really that's just as a result of progress in technology in terms of how people can improve their bodies, how the game has evolved and all of that. And if Michael Jordan was playing in today's league, he would get those same benefits that modern day players did, so he would be better. But that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.